Now may I call on Miss Antonia Yulo Loyzaga, my partner, a long time in Coastal Cities at Risk. She used to be the executive director of the Manila Observatory, and now she's leading us there in the as president of the National Resilience Council. Tony?
Thank you very much, Doc Ems, and thank you to the speakers and the reactors so far for these very interesting and insightful presentations and reactions. I'd like to start by saying that I feel a little bit out of water here, not being an academic and being mostly in the practitioner area at this point. I feel that perhaps maybe a perspective from the practitioner and particularly in engagement of the private sector in climate resilience, if I may contribute in a small measure to the great information that has already been shared with us by the academic work that has been done and the research work that's been done. My first comment would be towards Justine's presentation, and the central message that was driven home by that presentation was climate resilience and disaster resilience is a negotiation, and that negotiation is often biased in favor of those that in fact have the voice, are able to participate more actively, and that are empowered by the knowledge and skills and expertise that they are able to access. And so that negotiation is a continuous process. As risk continues to evolve, these power relationships, given the meta capabilities that Justin has mentioned, also are dynamic. And so the processes continue. It's very important to recognize that these three capabilities are in fact part of transformation in terms of vulnerability. In this respect, in terms of his study, in terms of vulnerability because of the lack of safe housing and the access to the kind of resources that are needed in order to maintain a quality of life. And the role that, in fact, participation and knowledge had played in providing that voice to the communities that were successful in doing so. The second presentation from Dr. Ravagos really brought home the point that informal and formal incomes are part of the social and the physical intersection of the geographies of risk in the country, and how, in fact, targeted social protection needs to be crafted in order to address the specific context of income-related poverty in the country and the impact of extreme weather events on these. Where that led, in fact, quite naturally, is towards asking the question, what is the role of rural to urban migration in terms of establishing who in the city is in fact going to become informal, who in the city is going to be part of the urban poor, whether you are part of the formal poor or the invisible poor in the city. And so I do feel that there's a lot of work that can continue to be done in understanding informality and vulnerability, not just based on incomes. And hopefully that becomes an area of study that can be pursued given the work that has already been done by Dr. Ravagos. In Doc Gay's presentation, and this I find extremely critical, unpacking vulnerability is the key towards transformation and resilience. And without this unpacking, private sector, other parties, national government will not be able to, in fact, target the kind of interventions and design the kind of interventions, whether they be on the policy or on the practice level, in order to, in fact, decrease that vulnerability. The second point here is, I think, a point that Doc Emma and I continuously talk about is the intersectionality of vulnerability, and how the intersectionality of the different dimensions of vulnerability actually provide the foundation. Understanding that intersectionality provides the foundation for a multi-pronged, multidimensional approach as well to understanding it, and then to actually providing some measure of integration in terms of the approach to providing solutions at the end of the day. We need to understand that as we unpack that there in fact are these intersections between the different dimensions of vulnerability. And that message was brought home quite clearly to me through Doc Gay's presentation and through the presentation of Madame Wapiporn. Addressing this on a daily basis, the intersectionality, and trying to address it at the practice level as well as at the, hopefully at some point, policy level, would be the real challenge I think that we're faced with. From the perspective of the private sector, and that's what I've been asked to comment on, I'd like to say that there are new pathways towards engaging the private sector in negotiating resilience within the city and of course at the national level. And I'd like to point out that there are developments in the regulatory environment, in the environment that involves disclosures by private corporations that can in fact provide entry points towards negotiating this resilience more effectively. And I wish to point out here the movement towards environmental, social, and governance standards that are now being articulated and developed in terms of the reporting of private corporations to their stakeholders and to the different global publics. Environmental, social, and governance standards include impacts on the environment, impacts on the communities, impacts on the different rights that should be associated with those that are within the sphere of influence, if you will, by corporations. And here's an opportunity for us to actually learn and understand more from each other. I think that by looking at ESG very carefully in terms of the way it's going to be articulated and defined in the reporting on the ethical standards that should govern the private sector, as well as the sustainability and resilience standards that are going to define private corporations. There are opportunities for this negotiated resilience with the learning of the different vulnerabilities and how they intersect with each other to be part of that discussion. And I think academia has a very critical role to play here in engaging both the private sector as well as the rest of the community in articulating what should be involved in these standards of ethical behavior and sustainability of the private sector. And I think I'll end there because as Emma knows, and those of us like Dr. Gay and Jessica who are part of the Coastal Cities at Risk project, we have stressed the need to own and co-own the risk that we face. And here's where the vulnerability analysis really could support. In fact, this whole issue of equity, accountability, and transparency. And by owning, co-owning, and co-generating solutions made possible through exchanges such as this morning, I think that would be the only way forward in terms of negotiating resilience for all, rather than just being biased towards some. Thank you.